Do want to get into some other news that we are covering right now, as Israel's defense minister does say the ball is in Hezbollah's court as Israel prepares for a full-scale war against the terror group. Yoav Gallant saying Friday that Israel, quote, is not looking for a war with Hezbollah and that a diplomatic solution would be better. In the meantime, do want to take you out to this post right here that is coming in from Iran's mission to the UN in New York there. Now, Iran's mission to the UN issuing a full threat to Israel. This is a post on Twitter saying in part, if Israel launches a military retaliation on Hezbollah in Lebanon, quote, an obliterating war will ensue. We know the Hezbollah attacks on northern Israel do continue following weeks of intensive rocket fire. Do want to talk more about all of this here, so let's bring in Mark Chandler, the Director of Government Relations and a professor of practice at Coastal Carolina University, also a former senior defense intelligence official, joining us now live. Thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to be here with us today.
Good morning, Josh, and you're welcome.
All right, so first off, we have to talk about this tweet, this X post that did come in from Iran's mission to the United Nations. Tell me what you make of it.
Well, first off, I have to say it's kind of ironic that Iran's going to come out with a post like this, considering that they're the ones behind Hezbollah and pushing Hezbollah to attack Israel, calling out Israeli propaganda. Again, that's just an ironic statement coming from the Iranian regime. So when I look at this, and the reason I say that is the Iranian foreign minister has made at least 2 trips over the last 3 weeks to both Syria and Lebanon to talk to Hezbollah, to try to push Hezbollah into attacking Israel more openly and more broadly on that. So it's a little bit rich for them to be saying this. Now, even though I'm going to characterize this as propaganda, some information warfare, and attempted intimidation, I do want to point out that Iran does have options if this escalates into open warfare. They are pushing Hezbollah to attack, but they can then also bring all of their Shia militia allies, if you will, in the region into this attack. The Houthis they're working with already, they can escalate that. They could attack from Iran proper, although I think that's less likely considering how much Israel would retaliate directly against Iran. And they can go into all-out warfare by pushing Hezbollah. Now, something that's not spoken about a lot but is very dangerous is Iran could control the Straits of Hormuz. They could shut down all the oil, not all, but most of the oil shipments coming out of the Middle East. So Iran's propaganda is backed by reality, and that makes it a little disconcerting, even though I consider it an ironic post from the government.
And I do want to talk a little bit more about the situation, the comments that were made by Yoav Gallant, as he did say that Israel is not looking for a war right now. What do you make of that comment, as we know that Israel is prepared to go to war, but Yoav Gallant saying that's not the ultimate goal here?
Well, and I have to believe his words. And the reason I say that, he spent a lot of time in Washington this week, talking with Secretary of State Blinken, talking with Secretary of Defense Austin. And honestly, no one except the truly barbaric want to go to war. And so I think what Gallant's talking about is peace is better. Diplomacy is better to solve this problem with Hezbollah. Israel did not initiate this. It didn't initiate the October 7th Hamas attacks. It didn't initiate any of the Hezbollah attacks on Israel. So I think what Israel's looking at is, let's solve this in a diplomatic manner. And so I do believe his words out there. However, I think we need to pay attention here, because a lot of people have lost the art of peace through strength. And I think Israel is illustrating that very well right now by talking diplomacy, but being ready militarily, because Israel doesn't want to suffer a surprise attack like they did in the 2006 Hezbollah attack on Israel. That war lasted 34 days, was very destructive. So I think by being prepared, and the military has plans that have been approved by the military, but not by the political side of Israel at this time. So they are prepared to attack, go in both on the ground and in the air, to push Hezbollah back, to stop Hezbollah, and basically to not eliminate Hezbollah completely, that's a significant military objective. But to make sure it's so painful for Hezbollah that they don't attack out there. So Gallant's message, true, let's see diplomacy, but we're prepared to fight if you don't want to go up there. He also added that we're coming up to a critical intersection, an intersection in time between war and peace. And I think that really speaks volumes of Israel still is looking for off-ramps for peace in this situation, but are fully prepared for war. And that's a calculus Israel will determine on its own for its own national security and the security of its citizens.
We know that the U.S. has now positioned the assault ship, as it's been called, the USS Wasp, out there off the coast of Lebanon. What is the U.S. hoping that it can accomplish by doing that?
Well, I think the mission that the U.S. is putting out there, the Marines on the Wasp, and actually there's two other ships that go with that. We call that an amphibious ready group. It's an ARG, and we carry Marines on those three different ships. We carry combat aircraft, fixed wing aircraft, and we also carry attack helicopters and troop transport helicopters. So we've got about 2,000 plus Marines on the coast or moving toward the coast of Lebanon. The twofold objective, one, to show support for Israel, because the U.S. has said if Hezbollah attacks and the war widens, the U.S. will support Israel in this fight. So now we have combat forces there. The second, and just as important, is one of the missions that amphibious ready group, the Marine Expeditionary Unit that is on those ships, one of the missions is non-combatant evacuation operation. So if citizens get trapped in a combat zone or an untenable area, you know, the Marines mission, and I was part of planning and conducting several of these in my career, we go in and we take out those citizens, hopefully through what we call a permissive environment, but sometimes we have to fight our way out or protect those citizens. So that's what those Marines are prepared to do, support Israel and evacuate American citizens and third country nationals if needed.
We're hearing from some military experts who say that Hezbollah is holding back its, quote, most devastating weapons. I know we've talked about this in the past, and Hezbollah is far superior to Hamas when it comes to weapons. But do we know what kind of powerful weapons Hezbollah might have?
Well, I think we need to look at this, Josh, in the context of numbers and technology. So first off, looking at the Hezbollah fighters, we're upwards of 100,000 fighters. They can go in, combat forces on the ground. That's a significant number of fighters. They do a lot of control of the Lebanese civilian populace in the southern part of Lebanon, but they are combat capable. They've proven that over the past decade in Syria. Secondly, when they bring together their missile arsenal, and don't forget, 90% of this provided by Iran. So you have both rockets and missiles, and then you have more precision missiles with a lot longer range. So while we saw Hamas, they could launch those rockets and they could go, you know, tens of miles into Israel, southern Israel, from the Gaza Strip. Basically, from Lebanon, Hezbollah can range the entire country of Israel with larger warheads, longer range, and a lot more accurate missiles. And they're being supplied by Iran UAVs, these attack UAVs that Iran is pretty much using throughout the Middle East, but they're supplying Russia in its fight against Ukraine. So a lot of technological advances that Hezbollah has. I mean, they're Iran's number one proxy to go against Middle Eastern countries and especially Israel. So Hezbollah can bring that into the tens of thousands. Up to this point, they have launched about 5,000 rockets and missiles against Israel. Not all of them have been effective, but they haven't used the most effective, most accurate, and longest range of those. So that could escalate significantly should Hezbollah to try to do that. And we're talking about hitting the major cities, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa. You're going to hit those major cities when Hezbollah decides to use it, causing significant destruction.
And it's interesting because the IDF did release some statistics maybe 24 hours ago where they did say that 1 in 6 of the rockets that were launched by Hezbollah have actually landed within Lebanon. So that's about 1,000 if you count them overall that have landed within Lebanon rather than over in Israel. So we know that the U.S. is now kind of joined in on the countries that are urging their citizens to leave Lebanon. Does that indicate that world leaders, including, let's say, President Biden, are concerned that this really is going to escalate into a full-scale war?
Well, the short answer to that one, Josh, is yes. I do believe you're starting to see world leaders, Western countries, show significant concern based on all the indications that are out there that this could lead to open warfare at any moment. I mean, we would like to, obviously, as an intelligence professional, I would like to tell you that a war is going to start at this time on this day, but we just can't do it. So the prudent measure is to take care of your citizens. There's a lot of third country nationals, U.S. citizens in Lebanon. France has a lot of citizens there based on its long-standing relationship in Lebanon and history there. But you look at it, you had Germany, the Netherlands, and Canada before the U.S. tell their citizens to start evacuating. The concern is if warfare breaks out tomorrow, it's likely that Beirut International would be closed. And that's one way citizens get out is they go there, they take an airplane, they get out of there. But Hezbollah is storing a lot of its munitions, these sophisticated munitions we just talked about, at Beirut International. So that's obviously going to be a target. So it's going to be untenable to get out there. The port of Beirut, so that would be my second option to pull citizens out, probably going to be closed. So it's better right now to get the citizens out of harm's way than trying to go in there and forcibly pull those citizens out under the umbrella of fighting, which obviously would be one of the Marines missions that we just talked about there. So I think you're starting to see heightened concern, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see more countries start to tell their citizens to voluntarily evacuate the combat zone or potential combat zone.
Yeah, and I do want to talk a little bit more about the situation in Gaza going on between Israel and Hamas, because we know that there was this humanitarian crisis. That's how it has been worded. That led, of course, the U.S. to build that Gaza pier to help bring in the aid. But so far, we've seen that pier kind of go down a few times, and now it's being taken apart. It doesn't appear that it's done what it was intended to do, right?
Well, I guess it depends on your perspective out there. If I'm messaging that the United States is there to help and we're going to provide supplies, then the message, we built a pier, we put some supplies ashore. If I'm messaging that, it's going to make a difference, no, it's failed that mission. It's kind of, and I hate to disparage, I'm a Marine. I hate to disparage any of that, but the military success of this, we built a pier, we put it ashore, but the throughput of supplies, that's kind of where things have fallen down. We put about 13 million pounds of foodstuffs and other supplies ashore. Over half of that is still sitting in the beach storage area because the UN back in early June stopped moving the supplies due to a non-secure environment. Those convoys were being attacked and looted, so there was no security to move the supplies further inland. This pier has only been operational half of the time that it's been set up since it went operational in May. So you start to look at that. I'm going to say, hey, great effort, great try. The U.S. did show that it was trying to help the humanitarian issue, but I'm not so sure that I would call this a complete success in that mission. And I just don't know if they're going to bring it back. There is some talk taking place in the Defense Department right now of we may keep it in port and start to disassemble it because it's just not worth it. It's about $230 million in operating costs to keep that thing going through this month. So you start to look at that and the benefit that's coming from it. I think the messaging, let's just take a small victory here and disassemble the pier.
Right, because we know that we've seen portions of it kind of washed away, so to speak, by the rough seas that are out there. So every time they kind of get it operational, they then have to take it down at least for a little bit. So we will keep an eye on that and, of course, see what happens next with it. My final question for you, it's the final question I always ask. What is the latest with the situation involving the Houthis attacking those commercial ships over there in the area of the Red Sea?
Well, the Houthis have been busy this week. I counted and tracked at least 7 different days of attacks over the past week. Now, a couple of things the Houthis did. This week was one of their longest range attacks out in the Gulf of Oman. So somehow they started to move up into the northeastern part of Yemen near the Omani border and attacked a ship with a very long-range missile out there. Now, they said they had a hypersonic missile. I want to dispel that right now. The Houthis have in no way do they have a hypersonic missile technology. They don't. It's only 2 countries in the world have an operational capability, and that's Russia and China. So the U.S. is trying to get that capability. So for the Houthis to say that, that's just misinformation from the beginning. But what they did use likely was a longer range Iranian provided missile. And they've been able to do that. And Iran's been able to keep those supplies going of the better capable missiles into the Houthis' hands. They also, again, damaged a ship, I think it was yesterday, with one of their explosive drone boats that they've used. So that's a second successful attack, very hard to defend against in those shipping channels. And then yesterday, they also used a barrage missile attack in the Red Sea. So the Houthis are remaining active. They're using the technology that they have. They're being more accurate in their attacks. So while 7 may not seem like a lot, it's 7 that have a more than 50% success rate of hitting their targets in the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea. So we're going to continue to see this interruption of global shipping, at least 16% of the world's global shipping through this area. So it's going to be pretty rough.
And I hope I'm saying it right, the hypersonic missile. What exactly is that? Because I know that I've heard that term used a lot over the past, I would say, several months here, especially as it does relate to the Houthis. But as you said, there's only, 2 countries that actually have it.
Yeah, well, that hypersonic missile, Josh, basically what it is, it launches like a regular missile, like a regular ballistic missile. However, then it kicks in with a special engine, special motor capability, a hypersonic speed capability. When I say hypersonic speed, I'm talking speeds up to 4,000, 5,000 miles per hour. So it takes a lot of technology to develop the aerodynamics of that type of missile, the composite material that makes up that missile. But there are no defenses against a hypersonic missile. It's traveling so fast. It wouldn't even need a warhead on it to cause significant damage. So put a warhead on that, look at the speeds, and then you know significantly what you have as a threat with this hypersonic capability. It's something that truly does concern me in a strategic sense when we look at Russia and Chinese capabilities.
Yeah. Glad you were able to break it down, because I have heard that term so many times and didn't know exactly what it meant. So, Mark Chandler, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. Anything else you want to add about any of this from Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, any of that before I let you go?
Well, Josh, just a couple of things for context and perspective, because there's a lot of dynamics at play here and a lot of actors out there. So we have Israel, we have Hezbollah, and we have Iran. I went over some of the Iranian calculus of what they may do. Israel definitely wants peace. They want a peaceful solution, a diplomatic solution to this. But I think there are certain aspects that will cause Israel to act. They've been preemptive in their attacks to try to send strong messages, taking out key leaders of Hezbollah, key transshipment points. But I think when you look at the 100 plus or approximately 100,000 Israeli citizens displaced from the north, it's time for Hezbollah to follow what it's supposed to do diplomatically, and that is go back to the UN-mandated 18-mile limit, no forces within that border. That's what Israel wants. If they did that, we have peace today on that. But as Hezbollah continues to push, if they escalate this and start attacking more civilian targets, Israel will have no option but to forcibly push Hezbollah back. That's going to be a significant fight and significant damage. So we look at that, and that's what Israel has to balance right now while not being surprised. And that's the $64,000 question for any intelligence analyst, is how to avoid that surprise of a major escalation. Hezbollah, their propaganda, they're being pushed by Iran, and we start to look at that. What is their calculus? Where do they say, I'm willing to take the risk of significant major destruction, probably attacks on the leadership itself, to attack Israel? What gain do I get, and how much destruction can I levy on Israel before I feel the pain? Forget Lebanon, forget the Lebanese government. They're not a factor in Hezbollah's calculus. They don't care about the people. It's about what Hezbollah can do to survive. So you've got different mindsets at work here, trying to wage a calculus that sometimes we in the West don't quite understand or can't put our perspective on it from Western mindset, especially dealing with terrorists or dealing with a rogue regime such as Iran or Hezbollah. So we're in a very precarious situation in the Middle East right now. And really, one incident, accident or intentional, could tip this thing over that edge.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to, it might be an understatement to say that it's very difficult to say what is going on in the mind of a terrorist. So, Mark Chandler, thank you so much for taking the time to join us as always. We do appreciate it.
Josh, it's my pleasure. Hopefully we've shed a little light on this and clarified a few things today for everyone. Have a great day.
You always do. Have a great day.